Hello, welcome to Sound and Fury Book Reviews. As usual, I'm Tina. Today I'm doing a book review of Titanshade by Dan Stout. This is a book from 2019. It's an urban fantasy thriller mystery from DAW. I'm pretty sure this was a BookBub book because that's how I get 90% of my ebooks that aren't ARCs, and it was definitely worth the $1. Yes, I'm going to throw up the GIF as I always do. An engrossing detective story set in a unique fantasy setting, Titanshade entirely caught me by surprise. I'd been wanting to read this since I bought it like a year ago, but I just couldn't work it into my schedule, and I was so happy to finally start it. What's it about? Carter's a homicide cop in Titanshade, an oil boom town where 8 tracks are state-of-the-art, disco rules the radio, and all the best sorcerers wear designer labels. It's also a metropolis teetering on the edge of disaster. As its oil reserves run dry, the city's future hangs on a possible investment from the reclusive amphibians known as squibs. But now negotiations have been derailed by the horrific murder of a squib diplomat. The pressure's never been higher to make a quick arrest, even as Carter's investigation leads him into conflict with the city's elite. Undermined by corrupt co-workers and falsified evidence, and with a suspect list that includes power-hungry politicians, oil magnates, and mad scientists, Carter must find the killer before the investigation turns into a witch hunt, and those closest to him pay the ultimate price on the filthy streets of Titanshade. That was so much fun to do. Where to start with this one? Of course, I was drawn in by the cover. Alien-like dude in a suit. I mean, I'm all for that. What can I say? I have a type when it comes to books. But I also love sci-fi or fantasy worlds where humans and other sapient species have to work together, and where the world building reflects the differences in their cultures and physiology. In this case, it's a fantasy world, as there's magic and the gods and the like, but the fantasy is so interwoven into the real life stuff that it's almost unnoticeable at times, which is what you want. It feels natural. The issue too, the reason for the mystery, is also rooted in something that is unique to the world building. If not, I would be questioning why do it in this fantasy setting at all, so that was really well done. It's also completely without info dumps. We're told information as we need it, and things aren't obliquely stated, like why the town is called Titanshade. That was great. I loved that. I also loved how there are kind of things from our world, like 8 tracks and things like that, but it makes sense because of the world building ties into that. I don't like in fantasy books when there's anachronism. I'm reading one right now. I'm not going to tell you what it's called, but the review's coming up for the first week in December, where the fantasy aspect is very, very thin, and their stuff just feels like it's out of place and doesn't make any sense. This book definitely does not do that. It makes sense why there's cars. It makes sense why there's this. It makes sense why there's that, because the world building reflects it. So we have 3 or 4 species that we see. The world apparently has 8. There's the humans, of course, the Mollycampi, which my boy Ajax there is, the squibs, as it said in the blurb, who are kind of amphibious, frog-like, and a few others. As with all stories with this sort of thing, I love the fantasy species and the different facets of their biology. There wasn't too much on cultural differences, as they sort of felt like humans, but that would have added an entirely new layer onto this that would have been a bit too bloated and probably confusing. There are cultural differences for sure, but there's a history to the world building in that the city's been around for 300 or 400 years. So these species have been living together here for that amount of time at least. So they've kind of amalgamated in that sense. It's kind of like a melting pot of culture. And I thought that was really cool and actually really interesting. And I also loved how there's kind of hints of speciesism, but not really, and people there's interspecies dating and stuff like that. Of course, I'm into that. The characters themselves are great. We have our main character Carter, who carries a sort of noir cop air in that he's rough around the edges, he's traumatized, a bit of a drunk, and he has no sense of self-preservation. But he doesn't go too far with it. He's likable at the same time as he has some serious flaws. You want to be like, no, dude, don't do that, don't do it. But at the same time, you get why he goes ahead and does it. Ajax, of course, a new book crush of mine. I'm too old for him, though, I guess. Anyway, he's a young, out-of-city cop on his first assignment, and he's the smart one of the two. Where Carter is brash and flies by the seat of his pants, Ajax is cautious and well-researched, but also not afraid to act. They worked really well as partners. I enjoyed their kind of buddy cop dynamic. It was great. We have a slew of other characters who both fit typical detective tropes and subvert them. There's the hard-ass police chief, who in this case is a woman. There's the femme fatale, who isn't hypersexualized but still fits the bill. The specialist agent, who is a divination expert. I thought that was really fun. The evil German-coded doctor. Being German, I'm always amused by this. The arrogant hotshot cop. The young woman in over her head who the detective wants to save. In this case, though, it's not her going to his office being like, oh, please help me, sir. It's that they have a relationship and they have a dynamic that I really, really enjoyed and that gets fleshed out as the story goes forward. And she doesn't just feel like she's there to be saved. In fact, that's not it at all. And I really, really like that. And lastly, there are sex workers because there's got to be sex workers in a detective story. But the way sex work was handled in the book was respectful and not vilified, and it was not used as an easy plot point. I also loved how all the women characters were fully fleshed out and not victims of the crime, which is often the case in police stories. Like, how often are young women the victims? Like 95% of the time? Like, you pick up a thriller where it's like, a young woman's body has been found in the river, and you're like, well, of course it was a young woman. Anyway, the action scenes are a lot of fun with some hand-to-hand, some chases, some shootouts, and some magical stuff. A great balance, a great blend. I honestly could not put this book down. The mystery aspect wasn't the most compelling in the world, but everything else around it was so much fun. If I had any critique, it would be that the first third takes a while to really kind of get going. It feels like it's kind of chugging along for a while. I wasn't sure how the three facets of the mystery were related for a while, and not in a like, ooh, how are they going to mesh kind of way, but in a like, wait, why is he investigating this too? And I was like, well, is this related? Like, why is he sent over here when he should be doing this? I might have also missed it. I don't know. Anyway, that eventually cohered, but I was just, at the start, I was kind of like, what? There is a red herring in the middle too that I wasn't sure was needed, but it's not like it was bad. I was just kind of like, oh, okay. I mean, I don't know if we needed it at all. The book is quite long, but I mean, I was having so much fun. I didn't really care. Overall, if you love detective stories and want something in a new setting with interesting characters and fun action, you should totally check this out. There are more in the series. I think there's 3 more, and I am definitely planning on reading them. Probably not until next year, but who knows? Maybe I can squeeze one in December. I don't know. I'm going to talk about some spoilers for a minute here because I really liked this book, so I'm going to talk about the spoilers. So if you're not sticking around for the spoilers, thank you so much for watching, and do check this book out if you can get it. I think I got it on Amazon. So here comes the spoilers. First, I loved how Talina, Carter's sort of stepdaughter, and Ajax have a mini crush on one another. That was so much fun. It was literally a one-line exchange about halfway through from Talina, and then another one-line exchange later on between Carter and Ajax. But somehow this launched a ship for me that I was just like, oh, I hope this comes about in the second book. Like, that is so well done. I love when books do this, when they kind of hint at two characters liking one another, and it was so subtle, and you could have missed it, like if you were for some reason tired and like missed that line. But I don't know, I really like that. I also really liked the sort of romance between Carter and Jellica. It was also mild, but I'm curious to see like what the polished, powerful politician, sees in drunken old Carter. Is she going to be in the next book? I don't know. If she's not, I'm not going to be upset about it. But if she was, but if she is, I'm going to be like, oh, good. I also like that twist with her, how she was sort of like a monster thing. I can't remember what it is now. But that was really fun, too. I didn't really see that coming until kind of right as it happened. I was like, oh, okay. The whole scene with her mom, too, was really fun. I loved how the economic status of the city, the world building about how mana had run out and caused a shortage, and now oil ran the city, but that's running out, and how there was all these talks about like bringing in eco-friendly power. I was like, that's so relevant to today, but it also made sense for the world building. I love how all of that was tied to the mystery in kind of a political way, because I really do love political thrillers too. I loved how events in the past caused the culture to evolve in the city, like the sky burials versus cremations, and how all the world religions kind of emerged into one over time. That was really fun backstory that didn't need to be provided, but I just thought it gave the story so much depth. There's so much going on with the world in this book. You just kind of want to live there. I mean, I would love it. That sounds great. Get myself a Mullen-Campy boyfriend. Anyway, so yeah, let me know in the comments if you've read this, if you loved it. Yeah.